Welcome dear students with a new topic. Today our topic is parliamentary form of government in UK and India. This lecture will try to give us understanding of what parliamentary government is all about. It will try to see how parliamentary system works in UK and in India. It will also try to focus on the similarities and differences between the two countries on the parliamentary form of government. There are parliaments in numerous nations around the world. The mother of all parliaments is the English Parliament. The cabinet government, also referred to as the parliamentary system of government, is based on the legislature and executive branch working closely together. The executive is answerable to the legislature and is only in power as long as the legislature continues to have confidence in it. The parliamentary system, a democratic type of government, elects its prime minister or chancellor from among the parties or coalition of parties with the most representation in the legislature. Now, the members of the parliament who have been appointed to the cabinet by the prime minister execute executive duties. The minority parties have an obligation to consistently challenge the majority and work against it. When a majority of the ruling party or the parliament loses confidence in the prime minister, they have the right to be dismissed from office. A number of Britain's former colonies adapted the parliamentary system once it was developed there. India is a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic, and republican nation that uses the Westminster style of administration, sometimes referred to as responsible government or cabinet government. There are many countries that use this type of government, including Britain, Japan, Canada, and, as you know, India. Now, the word parliament, it has been derived from an old French word parlement and Latin word parliamentum. The French word parlor means to talk. Again, democracy, that's a Greek word that comes from demos, which means the people, and kratian, which means to rule, is a political system in which the people of a country rule through any form of government they choose to establish. Parliament is the supreme legislative body in various countries in the world. Why we are discussing democracy? Because parliament is the democratic form of government. So it is the symbol of exercising democratic rights of citizens through their representatives. But this right have not been bestowed suddenly upon the mankind from the blue in any twinkling night. More precisely, the people's sovereignty in state politics was not built in a day. It has come through a passage of struggle of tens of thousands of people over hundreds of years. Many people embrace martyrdom for realization of parliamentary democracy. The struggle for democracy has not been put off anywhere in the world. Whenever the authority in the state power attempts to deviate from the norm of democracy, its people voluntarily and vehemently come out to oppose. The modern parliamentary democracy that denotes people's participation in every state of affairs has a long journey far from 12th century. The concept of pulling representatives of certain classes of people for royal discussion was set in motion for the first time in Germany in the beginning of 1100s. The house for each discussion was named Reichstag. Reichstag is the ancient legislature of the German Empire or Holy Roman Empire from the 12th century to 1806. In the Carolingian Empire, meetings of the nobility and higher clergy were held during the royal progresses or court journeys as occasion arose to make decisions affecting the good of the state. Now, after 1100s, definitely the emperor called the Diet, that is the parliament, to meet in an imperial or episcopal see within the imperial frontiers. The German Empire was thus the pioneer of parliamentary practice in the world. Nevertheless, the British Parliament at Westminster is called the Mother of Parliaments. The reason might be that the British Parliament could uphold its parliamentary practices uninterrupted. It has been the model for legislative assemblies in many countries in the world. Now, features of parliamentary form of government. Now, following, there are some features of the parliamentary form of government. Now, in its first place, parliamentary form of government is characterized by the presence of nominal head executive and in whose name the entire administration is carried out. However, the real powers of the nominal head are exercised by the Prime Minister and other members or his Council of Ministers. The Queen, now after the death of Queen of the England, there is the King. So, King and President of India are the nominal heads who exercise their power on the advice of Prime Minister and his Council of Ministers. And then the parliamentary government, it operates on the principle of fusion of powers. The Prime Minister and other ministers are members of legislature and are individually and collectively accountable to it. If a person who is not the member of legislature is included in the Council of Ministers, he must acquire the membership within the stipulated period of time. Otherwise, he ceases to be a minister after the expiry of that period. Now, the other feature of parliamentary form of government is that the parliamentary form of government implies the leadership of Prime Minister. The formation of the cabinet starts with the appointment of the Prime Minister, and all other ministers are appointed on his advice. The Prime Minister allocates portfolios to different ministers and presides over the meetings of the cabinet. Political hegemony is the another feature of parliamentary form of government. All ministers, they are taken from the ruling party, but if no single party gets the majority, in that case, coalition government are formed. The other feature of parliamentary form of government is, under the parliamentary form of government, the legislature can pass vote of no confidence and force the cabinet to resign. The cabinet also enjoys the right to seek the dissolution of legislature. So, almost all these features which we discussed above can be found in the Indian and UK's form of government. So, which makes both these parliamentary form of governments. Now, let's discuss firstly the parliamentary form of government in UK. The legend of Stephen's right to say in the state affairs without referencing to Magna Carta remains incomplete. Magna Carta, widely known as the Articles of Barons, is considered as the milestone of parliamentary democracy in the United Kingdom. It was a result of long struggle between the barons and the kings of Great Britain in the 12th and 13th century on the Charter of Demands for establishing British Parliament and the people of Great Britain since 13th century have occupied an admirable place in the page of history of parliamentary democracy. The relentless work and supreme sacrifice of the British people obviously have contributed achieving people ownership in the state. Very blood-shedding time for establishment of parliamentary supremacy in the history of Great Britain was the mid-17th century, when the parliament became a revolutionary body and was the center of resistance to the king during the English Civil War, that was the period from 1642 to 1651. The bloody conflict started when King Charles, his reign starts from 1600 to 1649, dissolved the previous parliament for attempting to curtail his power. The king also failed to gain supports from the subsequent parliaments. At last, he called his fifth parliament in 1640. The king tried to have this parliament raise an army under his control. Unfortunately, he utterly failed to get the motion approved by the parliament. Instead, the parliament started raising parallel armies to fight battle with that of the king. The rivalry between the king and the parliament culminated into the First Civil War in England that began in October 1642. With the defeat of King's Scottish supporters at the Battle of Preston in August 1648, Charles lost the war and became a prisoner of the Parliamentary Army. Since then, Parliamentary Agency, with Oliver Cromwell as chairman, governed England as a republic that ended in 1660 with the restoration of monarchy. Through a passage of negotiation, debate, and conflict, British government took about 700 years to make the House of Commons democratic in the 19th century. Even though the members of middle class could not vote until the Great Reform Bill of 1832 was passed. Again, the working men did not have voting right before enactment of the Acts of 1867 and of 1884. Women of age 30 got the vote in 1918. This age was lowered to 21 in 1928. The age of adult franchise has been fixed to begin at age 18 in 1969. The United Kingdom is now a parliamentary monarchy. The head of state is a monarch bearing a hereditary title with limited powers. The head of the government is the Prime Minister. The Parliament consists of the House of Lords and the House of Commons and the monarch. There are 659 members of the Parliament in the House of Commons elected by universal adult franchise. House of Lords is composed of 675 members, 557 life peers and 118 hereditary members. The change and updating of the parliamentary system is a continuous process to cater the demands of the day. UK was the member of the European Union, but it exit on 31st January 2020. That's called Brexit. Elections are being periodically held to send members in the European Parliament, a great dimension of parliamentary democracy for the states under the Union. Now let's discuss the parliamentary form of government in India. India is a powerful country in the South Asian Association of Regional Cooperation, which is also called SAARC. India is the home of the largest parliamentary democracy, not only within the SAARC countries, but also in the world. The democracy, however, stepped into the culture of Indian politics only in 1920 during the colonial era of British government. This event came to happen when the then government of India promulgated the Government of India Act of 1919 under the recommendations of Montague-Chelmsford reforms. An election in India, first of its kind, was held under this act in 1920. The state of so-called democracy was peculiar in its character and type for the reason that the enfranchisement was based on property and education. Again, the total number of Indians eligible to vote for representatives was fixed to 50 lakh, and only 1/5 of that number were allowed to vote for legislative assembly. Further to add was that only 17,000 elite in whole India was permitted to choose Council of State members. Yet the effect of this election transferred the Imperial Legislative Council into a bicameral legislative consisting of a legislative assembly, that's the lower house, and a Council of States, that was the upper house. The relaxation of colonial rule over India came into being after promulgation of the Government of India Act 1935. This act provided maximum representative power with natives than ever. The parliamentary democracy in India of the contemporary British Raj style continued until India won independence in 1947. After independence, India took nearly 2.5 years to make its constitution. That came into force in January 1950. It provides a federal union of states. The bicameral system of parliament consists of Lok Sabha, which is also known as the House of People, or you can call lower house, and Rajya Sabha, which is also called Council of States, or you can call upper house. The Lok Sabha consists of 545 members. All these members are directly elected on the basis of universal adult suffrage, which started from the age of 18. The parliamentary system in India is modeled on the British monarchism. The position of the Indian president as head of the state is nominal and ceremonial. The Prime Minister is the head of government. He appoints a council of ministers to a term determined in the constitution, which is usually 5 years. Famous leaders have nourished Indian politics since 19th century, when All India Congress emerged as a political party to negotiate with British Raj for equitable share of the natives to rule the country. They all had valued the aspiration of people through the essence of democracy. Since independence, no change of government could happen bypassing the constitutional mandate of the nation. This mandate is an election of the universal franchise for choosing the leaders for tenure under provision of constitution. Now let's come to the conclusion. Modern parliament is a multifunctional institution that performs a variety of roles. Besides its traditional role, making functions, parliament exercises many representational, grievance ventilation and redress, educational, leadership, recruitment and orientation, legitimization, overseeing and surveillance over administration, and control over the executive roles. Parliamentary democracy is not a one-time settlement issue. It is rather a continuous struggle to get shaped with the requirement of modern age. Very large number of people in many countries dedicated their lives through movements for realization and holding of parliamentary democracy. Many of them came out successful, while the rest are still fighting on the streets for the people's right in the state affairs. The process and practice of parliamentary democracy, however, are not uniform or unique in all democratic countries. Different countries follow democratic practice on the basis of rules of their respective constitution. People of democratic countries still take to the streets for more transparency, freedom, and establishment of better right in the matter of state of affairs. Democratically conscious population of a country would reject any undemocratic move and raise their voice against it. This is how the people's supremacy would dominate state power. So, this was all about the parliamentary form of government. Hope you're satisfied. Thank you. Have a nice day.